Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fintech Times. We're very lucky today to be here in Amsterdam at Sibos 2022 Europe, and I'm very happy today to be joined by Uppili Srinivasan of the iGTB. How are you, Uppili?
Doing fine, thank you, Tyler.
Brilliant. What do you make of Sibos so far?
Very busy. Good to be back meeting people in person.
Yes, it's
very happy.
It's very fresh, and it's very good to see so many good faces.
Yes.
Before we get on with our discussion today, we've got a lot to discuss. But I just want to give our viewers a chance to get to know you a little bit better. So why don't you tell us about who you are, what your position is, and what your company seeks to offer?
Sure. My name is Uppili Srinivasan. You can call me Oops. Much shorter, much easier on the tongue. I'm the President and COO of iGTB, the transaction banking division of Intellect Design. I'm based in the US.
Fantastic.
The products and services that we do are digital, cash management, payments, liquidity, sub-accounting, virtual accounts, cash on the cloud, and trade and supply chain. That's the product set that iGTB offers.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that overview. I did actually manage to catch you a little bit this morning. Unfortunately, I couldn't stay for the whole session, but I saw that you were discussing the consumerisation of commercial banking.
Yes.
A very well attended session, and from what I heard of it, it was very engaging. Would you like to tell us just a little bit, now that the session's over, in sort of a retrospect? Would you be able to tell us a bit about what you were hoping to touch upon?
We at iGTB feel consumerization of commercial banking is a trend that commercial banks cannot ignore. If they just target their offerings, their products and services at the enterprise at large, it will not work. They need to understand the persona of the end user of those products and services. He may be a person playing a role in a commercial construct, but at the end of the day, he's an individual consumer as well. And he's got a persona. Not understanding that would mean their products and services will not be sharp enough. That's the overall theme. In the session itself, I presented the tenets of consumerization. How should commercial banks think of this as a trend? What are the strategies to deal with all of this?
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like you've really underlined a lot of really good points there, and I'm hoping that some of what you discussed in the session will spill over into this interview today.
Possibly.
So let's just jump straight into it, why not? In terms of, you mentioned there a bit about contextual banking and how that's sort of become a real talking point of the industry. I'm sure there's a lot of conversations going on as we speak about contextual banking. In terms of things like, for example, predictive analytics and machine learning.
Yes.
How is contextual banking interacting with those sorts of technologies?
Sure. For us to appreciate the depth of this question, first we need to define what is contextual banking. Contextual banking is the answer to the question, what if the bank actually understood or indeed anticipated what the user is trying to achieve, and towards that be able to offer the best next product or the best next action for the same, right? Once we understand this construct, then you can see how things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, predictive analytics, they all fit in. Wherever the bank is trying to understand what the user is trying to do without actually having him say that in so many words or do that, to be able to do that, all of these tools are options in front of the bank to consider to be able to understand the user better.
Sort of stay, in a way, one step ahead.
Exactly.
To anticipate what their consumers might need. And that, as you mentioned in the beginning, it's a very trending topic in Fintech at the moment, and a very important topic as well in the industry at large. In terms of liquidity insights, is something that you mentioned just at the beginning of our interview. How are liquidity insights playing into the rising importance of data overview?
One of the macro themes in front of commercial banking as a whole is the performance of the balance sheet. Liquidity management is a vital tool in their hands to be able to deal with that. Conventional liquidity management would be able to use conventional financial parameters such as balances and so on and so forth to be able to offer, say, cash concentration products or intercompany loans or notional pooling or investments and so on and so forth. Contextual liquidity, on the other hand, can use all of this but can go beyond to be able to use balance commitment, for example, stability of the balance or transactions. So that means a lot more data that it can process to then be able to offer the right kind of pricing to corporates and commercial customers.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that insight into liquidity. In terms of the rising popularity of corporate self-service solutions, what is that doing to the overheads of banks? And more importantly, which solutions are carrying that forward?
So when we talked about consumerization, right, that's in the heart of that space where customers interact with banks. So when you think of the 6 tenets of consumerization, one of the tenets is hyper-personalization. So for example, when corporate customers interact with banks, now banks will have to think of those customers as individuals at the end of the day, correct, and being role holders in an organization, having a persona. So banks will now have to sharpen their offering, be hyper personalized in terms of the kind of offering that they place in front of their customers. So from that standpoint, I don't think of this as an overhead. I think of this as a necessary response from banks towards this trend of consumerization.
Brilliant. And in terms of, I mean, you've touched upon personalization of services, and of course that's really important. It will encourage more people to use the right services for what they need it for, especially in terms of like lending
Yes.
or and general spending as well. And it's still very, very important, but in terms of what iGTB are doing,
Yes.
Personalization looks
Yes.
very different
Yes.
wherever you go. You know, I'm sure the financial services in the United States
Yes.
will be very different from what they are in Europe or elsewhere, for example.
Yes.
So, how is your company helping your clients to expand into these new regions and recognize how personalization differs in each region?
I'll take personalization as an example and then expand upon it. So personalization is a key tenet of consumerization. And in the presentation this morning, I spoke about 6 such tenets. I talked about some recommendations for commercial banks in this regard, right? Some strategies. So what iGTB is doing in this regard is we are advising our customers through our offerings as well as our consultancy services to be able to stitch together a response that's got 3 prongs. The first one is having contextual thinking, contextual design. The second one is having composable and hyperscale technologies. And the third thing is not just to think of it as one product or one service, but to think of it as a layer of products, solutions, platforms, and banking as a service. This is what iGTB is offering its customers so that they can stand out in the market against their competition.
Mm-hmm. That's a really, really interesting point that you've just made, and something, of course, that you outlined in your talk this morning. One other challenge of expanding regionally and looking at new markets and trying to take control of those new markets is the necessity for compliance.
Yes.
And I think, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that compliance is sort of becoming slightly more standardized than it was a couple of years ago, but there still remains those sort of regional discrepancies.
Yes.
How is iGTB helping your clients to meet those compliance needs?
So compliance requirements are part of the core product proposition. You cannot have products out there which are being consumed by your customers, which are banks, in different jurisdictions and ignore regulatory requirements or compliance altogether. For example, if you take Liquidity, a product that we just spoke about, there are different rules for notional pooling across some different jurisdictions. Some jurisdictions would not allow you to do notional pooling. In some jurisdictions, notional pooling is encouraged, and in some other, you can offer notional pooling creatively by using some other tools, right? The net effect of that is like a notional pool. To be able to be aware of all of these things so that you can offer the right kind of products and configure those kind of capabilities for your customers is important. So iGTB takes compliance or regulatory requirements quite seriously, and we bundle that into our product set.
That's really fantastic to hear and quite reassuring as well, of course. In terms of your use of cloud technology, what would you say, first of all, why did you choose to go on the cloud? And second of all, if I was one of your clients and I was hesitant about transitioning to the cloud, what advice would you give me?
Cloud, I don't think is an optional conversation anymore. It's mainstream. So any software provider out there that's ignoring cloud is doing it at his own peril. So we embraced this 4 years ago in 2018 when we re-architected all our products and services to be ready on the cloud, and now we have completed the journey. For banks, on the other hand, just because something technically works in that configuration, that alone is not enough for them to embrace that, right? They want far more assurance in terms of resilience, scalability, security, and several other things. So the message to banks is that if you're choosing somebody like iGTB, we work as part of an ecosystem. We have infrastructure as a service providers, cloud service providers, all part of the ecosystem. So you're really working with a consortium with a lot of experts that have got sharp skills in this domain, but in different areas. Somebody would know security. Another provider would know how to scale up those services, and somebody would be able to offer that in terms of data configurations and data management. And iGTB brings it all together with our own intellectual property thrown in as well. So really for banks, choosing the right main provider, principal solution provider like iGTB is important, because then they get to work with the best of the options available for migrating to the cloud.
You've really made a very good point there that it's no longer an option, essentially. And I think that in terms of, in line with what you're saying about personalization, I think from what you've said at least, it's really going to generate that level of personalization, security, and also automation as well. I think is very important within the cloud.
Yes.
My final question for you, Yups, is of course you've done your discussion this morning and it went very, very well. I was just wondering, what are you hoping to get out of your time at Sibos this week?
We have a saying in Intellect that first convert strangers to friends before you can convert friends to customers. I have quite a few friends here, but there are a lot of new friends that I want to make first. So Sibos is all about making those new connections and renewing existing connections. Once I have made that, I hope to be able to impress them with my product sets and services so that I can then convert those friends into customers. So it's a two-step process, so I'm going to enjoy every minute of this occasion for that.
Well, you're in exactly the right place. So I think now you've got one more friend in me as well.
Yes.
So that's fantastic. Well, this has been a really, really insightful conversation. I've really enjoyed this about contextual banking and the use of the cloud and liquidity, as you mentioned. Really, really fascinating insights, and we hope to have you back with us again soon. But for now, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Tyler.
Thank you.